Shanghai GDG is a very interesting developer community.
I'm glad somebody has asked this question.
This is where the magic happens.
This is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Jarek Wilkiewicz. Welcome to YouTube Developers Live. We have an exciting show for you today. In the studio with us is Greg Schechter. How are you doing, Greg?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Greg is our HTML5 developer at YouTube, and he will talk about, not surprisingly, HTML5 at YouTube. We have Jeremy Walker.
Hello.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
Pretty good.
How's life?
Good. I got a full night's sleep last night.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to keep you down in your seat. All that energy level, I think it's coming through.
Yeah, my 4 month finally slept through the night. So.
Oh wow, that's a big milestone.
Stoked. Yeah.
And then live from New York, Jeffrey Posnick.
Hey,
what
everybody.
up, Jeff?
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Haven't quite fought off my cold yet, but you know, I'll do my best to keep the coughing to the minimum as always.
Still summer in New York? Oh, is it fall yet?
It's actually kind of the lovely period before it gets too cold and not quite as hot as it has been, so very, very nice.
Cool. Later on in the show, Jeff is going to discuss our upcoming migration to Stack Overflow. We are not going anywhere, but the way you will get your support questions answered is going to change, and Jeff has worked on that over the last couple of weeks. He will give us an update of what's happening there. But first, let's turn it over to Greg and talk a little bit about his experience at YouTube and HTML5. So first question is, how long have you been at YouTube, and what do you do there?
So I've been at YouTube for about 2.5 years now, and I like to call myself the web warrior at YouTube. And specifically, I spend most of my time working on the HTML5 player and other HTML5 related things around the site. So
what do you like about working on YouTube and working on HTML5 player?
So YouTube is pretty amazing, and I mean, like, a lot of it is just because it's like there's so many awesome cat videos that I get to watch at work. But I get to work on, bleeding edge technologies. This stuff is all changing every day. I'm working with a lot of the browser vendors to really change the web. And not only just for people who are watching videos, but like, some of the things that I work on do help just HTML5 in general and moving the web forward, making new APIs. And this is very exciting for me, and it's a lot of fun to work on.
So as a web warrior, who do you get to fight?
So most of the time, my battle is against those Flash developers. I'm sorry if there's any out there in the audience.
We kept them out today.
Okay, good.
We have to do that in the following session.
But so at YouTube, one of the big battles with our player is, do we serve HTML5 or do we serve Flash? And Flash is like this, this experienced sort of player, and HTML5 is a new young guy. It's sort of a David and Goliath sort of situation. Although I think Flash isn't really Goliath anymore. But like, that's sort of the main battle, is kicking those.
Cool. So I bet that gets pretty tiring after a while. Does it?
Oh, sometimes.
So what do you do in your free time when you need to recharge?
Sure. So in my free time, I actually I do kind of a lot of nature things. So I do a lot of bird watching.
Wow.
And I find like weird salamanders and stuff all over the place. I take a lot of pictures and stuff. I think I actually have some of my photography to share.
Oh, great! Yeah, let's look at that.
So
I think we're sharing them here in the studio.
Oh, okay. Well, so let's see. The first one we have here. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's a green-eyed tree frog, and it's eating a huntsman's spider. And like, I love how like the little legs are sort of sticking out of its mouth. I was really kind of happy with that shot. One of the other ones that I have that is also pretty cool is of a nudie branch, and this one is just like a really weird creature, and I found this in Australia, but it's this. I love this picture so much that it's the background on my Android phone. And so the next picture I have this is more of like my bird watching thing, and I wanted to have some that were sort of local to the Bay Area, since that's where I live, and so this one I thought was great. This is a white-throated sparrow that I found near Santa Cruz, and it's just in the reeds there. It's sort of just really pretty, and I really like how the colors came out with the yellow lure on its eyes. So the next picture, this one was really cool. This was a little bit further south in Morro Bay, but I've got a horned grebe eating a fish, and it was this nice action shot, and I had like a bunch of shots in this series. And the last one was actually really close to Mountain View. This was just in the Palo Alto Baylands, and this is a lovely Anna's hummingbird showing off its nice gorget and the nice pink. Yeah, so that's also a great one that I.
Wow, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Cool.
Now to step aside, you've done Google I/O presentations the last 2 years. Right?
Yeah.
So what's changed in web development or YouTube since your first presentation to your second presentation?
Sure. So I think some of the biggest changes that I've seen are actually around the mobile space. And my talk, that's sort of like, I do HTML5 things, and sort of the biggest difference between the first talk that I gave and the second talk is the focus on mobile. And just like, more people are getting smartphones and tablets, and it's really becoming something that web developers need to think about when they're building a product.
So your 2012 was mostly focused on the mobile side.
Yeah. So the talk was HTML5 at YouTube, stories from the mobile front, and the idea was to basically show all the stuff that we're doing at HTML5 related, and talk about best practices and how a lot of those things are really important to mobile, and how in the past you have to use plugins, for example, Flash to watch video, or even Flash to do a lot of your uploads. But now with HTML5 being available, you can make a richer experience. And then it's also going to work on mobile. And with that being such an emerging sort of place for development, it's really important that you also have all that development that the time that you put in to develop also contributes to your mobile products.
That's awesome. I hear there's some things in the deck quite often, if I'm not mistaken, that you enjoy on YouTube. The feline persuasion.
Oh, of course. I got a lot of. I'm a big fan of cat videos, and certainly there's a lot. And in my talk, there's plenty of cat references and famous kind of YouTube references there.
Yeah, I watched that. It was pretty funny. I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and we will post the link to that presentation on our stream, YouTube developers, in case you have missed the session at Google I/O. Couple of questions about your session and mobile web in general. So I have noticed you have a lot of web browsers installed on your phone. How many?
So I think at the moment there's 9. And now to be fair, like some of those are different versions. So like I have both the Chrome browser and the Android browser installed. I've got Firefox mobile, Firefox mini, Firefox mobile, beta, alpha, Aurora, and Opera mini and Opera mobile and Opera Next. And then every now and then I'll even end up installing like one of the sort of lesser known ones like Dolphin. For like testing and making sure things are working properly.
You think that should be kind of the standard practice for application developers targeting mobile web, or why do you do that? Is it just for fun, or is it are there any significant feature differences between these browsers?
So it's a little bit of kind of everything. So certainly like I being a web developer, it's actually quite common that I never have just one browser open. I'm always sort of jumping in and seeing the new features, but that's because I enjoy it. For developers, I think it's very important to know what kind of user experience your users are getting. And so by me having all these different browsers on my phone, I'm able to constantly look to see what's YouTube like on Firefox, what's it like on Chrome, what's it like on Opera, and I can understand how these different browsers work. And also, for me, I do talk a lot with the different browser vendors, and I'll report bugs back to them so that I can make sure that YouTube is working properly for everyone. And it's not. I mean, it's a pretty low cost to install all these browsers on my phone. It took. They're all most of them are in the App Store, and the ones that aren't update really easily from if you just pull them up from one of the websites. But yeah, so it's pretty simple, and it's definitely something that's helped me get a better understanding of what the mobile environment looks like on all the different platforms and all the different ways that users might be experiencing YouTube.
So, you know, there's a lot of talk about mobile apps, native apps for mobile, and the question that I have in my mind is, you know, in your opinion, which types of apps benefit the most from mobile web? Like, what are the apps that are well suited for mobile web-based implementation?
So I really think that any app can do well with HTML5 on mobile. I think that it's probably most compelling for a site that also has a desktop experience, because what you have there is you have code that you would share between, you know, your desktop environment, your mobile environment, and, you know, maybe even your, if for whatever reason you're putting it on a TV as well. And it's really easy to make sure that your code works the same, and you don't have to rewrite things in like a new language or something. It's just everything will convert onto mobile pretty simply. Of course, you do have to make changes. The interface has to be different, make sure that touch is working. But as far as like some of the core structures, like how you would serve a video or you know, do AJAX calls and all that, that's all the same. That's not gonna change if you're on mobile or if you're on your desktop. And so that's certainly something that so anybody who has to support both, it's certainly going to save them a lot of development time if they don't have to basically reinvent all of their code in both places.
So which features do you think are still missing and are high priority when it comes to, you know, HTML5 support for mobile and maybe even desktop as well?
Sure. Well, so at least for mobile, I spend most of my time doing video development, and I think there's actually a lot missing there, specifically on phones. We sort of have two main issues, and one is you know, the screen size is very small, and so we haven't really been able to optimize our controls to deal with when, you know, your player is just very, very tiny and it's hard to click on and you don't have enough room for your fingers to sort of interact. But on top of that, a lot of times the full screen experience is sort of out of the developer's controls and just sort of goes sort of native playback. And so all this richness that we add to our YouTube videos, whether that be annotations or captions or even like our 3D effects, we sort of lose that power and that ability to make these features. And so this is, I think, is something that's really lacking in the mobile environment, is being able to have that richness that we saw on the desktop for video on mobile as well.
Is this something that is being tackled by browser vendors or standards right now?
Absolutely. Some of it is, and some of it isn't. One of the things that I've actually worked on recently is WebVTT. And WebVTT is a standard for captions, and so with this new HTML5 track element, we can have native browser rendering of our closed captioning, and so this is great because, you know, that's one of our features that's really important for people, especially for you know, accessibility. But I mean, I'm often in a crowded place and I can't necessarily, maybe I forgot my headphones, I can't hear it, and I would still find a lot of use for it. And so this will allow us to do, you know, the browser to do it natively, and it to work on all these different mobile places, and so I'm excited to when that will finally launch.
So it sounds like some of the features will basically move into the browser, so there's no need for the developer to implement it as some sort of an overlay. Well,
right? Certainly there's less of a need. Now, things like annotations at YouTube will still need to do that because that's sort of specific to us. But some of the more general things that we think all video should have, like closed captioning, will be integrated more and more with the browser as time goes on.
Great. So how happy are you with what has happened, you know, over the last year, over the last 2 years, 3 years in this space, as far as, you know, the velocity of that progress? This kind of goes back to Jeremy's question about what has changed between, you know, the I/O 2011 presentation that you gave about our iframe embed and, you know, the iframe API, and the 2012 experience about mobile. I mean, clearly mobile is accelerating in YouTube. We have recently announced that we hit 1 billion views per day, which is a staggering number.
Yeah.
But from kind of technology standpoint, browser support standpoint, is the progress fast enough? Is there thing that you think should be done differently, and what can the developers do to help accelerate it?
Sure. So I've got sort of mixed feelings on it. The mobile kind of has a lot of issues at the moment, and I look at this mostly with video, and the differences there's so many differences between each browser, how they do different things, what controls they show. Can you control the playback speed? Does autoplay work? And there's all these differences, and it's really difficult as a developer to build a rich experience when I don't necessarily know how the browser is going to work, and the fact that it's much different than the desktop space. And we also see that some of these mobile browsers aren't quite on par with the desktop experience. For example, it took us a really long time to launch Chrome. The Android browser was different, it was out of date, and we didn't have a lot of the richness that we saw on the desktop. Once we got Chrome, that closed the gap a lot, but there's still a lot that needs to be done to match the richness that we see on the desktop. Now, on the other hand, I actually think that Firefox has been doing a great job. They've been promoting mobile a lot with their Boot to Gecko stuff, and really trying to make sure that is sort of the central platform for things. And in the past year, they've released a lot of new APIs to deal with the fact that the mobile is sort of a primary device, and so they've released things like being able to do vibration just with the JS API, detect ambient light and all that, and I think that they're really moving quickly and adding that richness to make it even a richer experience than you have on the desktop. So I'd like to see some of the other browsers sort of step up and do as much as they are, but of course, it's a lot of work to get all this awesomeness into the mobile.
So what's your development environment like? What tools do you use for your hacking and free time? What frameworks do you like? Tell us a little bit more about how you work.
Yeah, so I spend, at work I spend most of my time just in Vim in a simple terminal, and as far as what frameworks I use in my free time, I love JavaScript libraries, and being a hardcore JavaScript guy, that's sort of, I spend most of my time working in the client, and recently I've been doing a lot of jQuery, but I'm sort of a diehard sort of YUI fan when I can. I used to work at Yahoo in the past, and I know a lot of the guys there, and I think that they've built a really great project. So I'll do either jQuery or YUI on my own. But yeah, no, it's pretty simple, just terminal stuff, nothing too complicated.
Cool.
And do you? I'm out of curiosity. Do you write your own code for checking HTML5 stuff, or do you use something like Modernizer?
I often write my own stuff. At YouTube, we're always really concerned about making sure that our JavaScript is as minimal as possible, and we, depending on the situation, we might already know ahead of time that we're going to be in a HTML5 supported environment. So we won't necessarily do all the checking that Modernizer does, because we can make it smaller and just not need all that extra code. So we normally do it our own.
So for a third-party developer, would you suggest they write their own, or would you suggest they use something like that?
I would suggest that they use Modernizer. I don't think they should necessarily waste their time, writing it themselves when somebody else did it and did it well already. Some of the stuff that we're doing isn't released yet. So the stuff I was mentioning earlier about the track tag, at the moment you can try that out, but it's hidden behind a flag in Chrome, and it's only in the Opera Next build, and so the feature detection there hasn't made it to the framework yet because it's not live. So we have to build these things because we're testing them and helping those browser vendors sort of move forward with their things, but not everybody needs to spend the time doing that.
Another question that frequently comes up is, when if I use YouTube, when do I get the HTML5 player? How can I get the HTML5 player? And kind of what is the logic? How is that implemented? That decides is this going to be Flash? Is this going to be HTML5? Can I use HTML5 for my testing? Can I force HTML5? Any kind of hints of how that works and what the developer should do if they really want to experiment with HTML5 support.
So my hope is that we can get all the videos on HTML5, and that'll be the default experience. We're not quite there yet. Flash has just a couple of core features that we don't yet have the capabilities to do in the HTML5 world. So once that changes, hopefully we'll be able to get HTML5 out as the default experience. Until then, the easiest way to get HTML5 is to go to www.youtube.com/HTML5, and you can opt into the experiment. And then, assuming that you're watching a video that supports all of the where our HTML5 player supports all the features that we need for that video, we'll give you HTML5.
Does the opt-in stay with the browser from which I opted in, or is it associated with my account? How does it work?
It's cookie based, so it's going to be just with that browser, with that session, with like that machine.
And will that apply to embeds as well, or just to YouTube.com?
It'll apply to all YouTube views. So embeds and just on YouTube.com. And so if you ever don't see a video, if for whatever reason the video doesn't play or it plays in Flash, that's usually because either the video might have just some business logic that maybe the stream is secure and we don't have the ability to do that yet in HTML5. So it's things like that where it's just features that we don't yet support, but you'll still get the Flash player.
So if I opt into HTML5, is there client-side logic that kicks in, or is this that on the server side? Like, for example, I'm on a platform that doesn't support Flash. Will you actually do that on the client and figure out the Flash is not available, or is this done based on the user agent header that is sent by the client? How does it work?
So we actually have a bit of both. So the server side sort of does like a basic sort of check. It guesses what it thinks your capabilities are, and that's looking at the user agent. And so if you're using like an old browser, it's going to assume that you need Flash. If you're using a user agent that we don't know, maybe it's on like a TV or something, we're going to also assume that it's Flash just because we don't know it. But then on the client, we have a lot of code that says, all right, we're going to try the Flash player. Okay, that didn't work at all. All right, now we have the ability to switch over to HTML5. And once we do that, we actually essentially opt you in to using HTML5. So the second time you view that page, you'll get HTML5 again. We'll remember, and so we won't keep trying to give you Flash.
Now, in addition to Flash versus HTML5, there's always the issue of codecs, right? How do you know which codecs will a given platform support? Like, how do you handle that?
So if you wanted to check to see what codecs your browser supports that we care about at YouTube, once again you can go to the /HTML5 page, and you'll see like the main formats that we support are H.264 and WebM, and as of today, you basically all videos that get watched should have both formats. Originally, a year ago, we didn't quite have all of the videos on WebM, but all new videos will have both WebM and H.264, and so we support those those two main ones.
So then, in your code, does the client iframe embed actually do any sort of checking to see which codecs are supported by a given browser, and how does this work? Like how does it detect it?
Right. Okay. So we have there's actually a lot of logic behind that. So the HTML5 video tag has APIs for us to see if it supports a codex, and so we can see if we have H.264 support or WebM support, and then we'll we have a list of things, and we'll. I'm a big fan of WebM. I think it's a great format. So normally we're gonna, pick those formats first and serve those, unless you're on a browser that doesn't support it, and then we'll go H.264. But on the mobile environment, it's actually today H.264 is a bit of a better option. It doesn't consume as much power because there's chips built into the phones to specifically do the hardware decoding, and WebM. There's a couple devices that have hardware decoding for WebM, but it's not that common yet. So in those situations where if we know that we're on mobile, we're going to pick H.264 first. But yeah, it's pretty much just simple using those APIs. Can play type is the specific one I'm referring to, and then having a bit of logic that we use with user agent checking to decide if we want to prefer WebM or H.264.
Do you see a lot more devices in the pipeline that have chips that support WebM?
I actually don't know much about it. Some of the people that I talk to are like pretty excited and they're pretty gung-ho about pushing WebM and getting it to be a better experience on mobile. But a lot of it I just sort of hear secondhand, so I'm not sure.
We actually work with the WebM team, so perhaps we should invite them to GDL and tell us more about it.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Jeremy. All right, so I know we have a couple of things we wanted to cover today. Jeff wanted to talk about Stack Overflow, and we wanted to look to see if there are any questions. So why don't we transition over to Jeff? And first of all, thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
For telling us more about your experience building HTML5 as a web warrior at YouTube. And thank you for sharing these wonderful photos with us. So now let's transition over to Jeff, who is joining us from New York. Jeff, tell us more about Stack Overflow.
Sure, and I also wanted to thank Greg because that was super interesting and really informative, so thank you. So Stack Overflow, first of all, hopefully a lot of you out there are already familiar with Stack Overflow. This is a very established technical resource that I use on a daily basis just to kind of look up answers to questions, not necessarily asking questions every day, but it's kind of known as being a really high quality question and answer site that has built-in ways of promoting the right answer. If maybe you have 6 different answers and one of them happens to be a lot more correct, let's say, or a lot more valuable than the other ones. Stack Overflow is really good about exposing the right answer to a given question. So we're big fans. Within Google's developer relations group, a lot of teams have already moved over to Stack Overflow as the primary source of providing answers to developer questions. Before Stack Overflow, a lot of teams, including the YouTube API, had a dedicated Google group, which had a web interface and an email-based interface where people could ask questions. And it works great for basic questions and for working as a mailing list. And we're still maintaining a Google group for announcement-only emails that folks could still subscribe to. But we really wanted to take advantage of some of the community features that Stack Overflow offers, and the fact that people have been asking questions on Stack Overflow related to YouTube and the YouTube APIs for years now, really, and we haven't been answering them. It's kind of hard looking at a bunch of different forums at once. Our focus has been on the Google group up until now, but now we're kind of looking forward to being able to answer people's questions on Stack Overflow. So folks who are organically just finding that site and asking questions there will suddenly start getting answers from Google's developer relations team and YouTube API developer relations team specifically. A lot of the questions previously had been answered by members of the community, and that's another great thing about Stack Overflow. We're really looking forward to the fact that there's an active community of developers who are experts in all different aspects, and hopefully we'll get some more API questions that are answered by people other than my immediate team on Stack Overflow, so that should make things a little bit better for everybody and quicker answers for everybody. And yeah, the gist of it is that starting on October 15th, we're not going to accept any new posts to our existing Google group that was set up for YouTube API questions. So it's going to go into archive-only mode, which means we'll still be able to make references to, old posts that might have a canonical answer to somewhere. That's not going to go away. It's still going to show up in the Google search index, obviously. It's just that we're not going to let people post any new questions there. And we're asking that people take things that are questions to Stack Overflow, but we're also going to be promoting, and I guess make it a little bit more prominent, our issue tracker that's been around for probably like 5 years now, and using the issue tracker as the authoritative place to report bugs with the API or to put in feature requests. Stack Overflow is very specifically a question and answer site and a place to go for technical questions. It's not a place to report bugs, and it's not a place to request features. And I think the Stack Overflow moderators tend to be a little, they're very diligent about closing feature requests and bugs that get posted there. So please keep in mind that if you have a feature request or you have a bug, use our existing issue tracker. We're going to get a lot better about keeping up to date on the things that come into the issue tracker, and it just lets us do things like assign a specific bug number that matches up with our internal bug database with an existing external bug, just to have the record keeping a little bit cleaner than what we could get in the Google group when people would report bugs there. So that overall migration, again, is going to take place on October 15th. Folks don't have to wait until then to start posting on Stack Overflow or start filing feature requests or bugs in the issue tracker. You can certainly do that now. And yeah, we're hoping that it leads to a better overall developer experience for everybody out there.
Jeff, what tag should people use when they file the Stack Overflow questions?
Yeah, that's definitely important. Stack Overflow gets a very large number of questions every day, so we have to be able to find your question if we want to answer it. And the specific tag that we're asking developers to use is YouTube-API, and that's the one we're going to be looking for. I know that a lot of people right now are posting things that are tagged with just YouTube without -API at the end. Those might get our attention every once in a while, but we're going to really be focusing on the ones that are YouTube -API, because those we know are API-related questions, rather than somebody who's just asking something about the YouTube website, for instance, which we really can't help with. So.
Now, as far as those people that have gotten addicted to emails from you, is there still a place where they can receive them?
Yeah, so we have that announcement-only email group that's going to keep around. We'll have links to all these groups. Well, we have links to all these groups in the blog posts that recently went up on apiblog.youtube.com, but we'll put it in links maybe to either this video or our Google Plus page, so you know where to sign up. But yeah, we're going to keep around that email-only announce group, and that's where we're going to be pushing out email notifications about important changes to the API. We have a few other channels for people can stay up to date. Obviously, that aforementioned blog is a great thing to subscribe to if you want to get notified whenever we have a new blog post. And we have our also aforementioned Google Plus page, which is google.com/plus/YouTube-dev. And subscribing to that will let you know when we're having all these fun, YouTube Developer Live events, as well as any other important updates that we want to push out to folks. And also, and this might be a nice segue, I wanted to mention that people can ask questions of us, not only via Stack Overflow, but also via the Google Moderator interface that we have for each of these weekly YouTube Developer Live sessions. So, we can answer some live questions during these, or, for more complicated things, we might just ask folks to post on Stack Overflow with all the debugging details and that sort of thing.
Cool. Speaking of which, Jeremy, do we have any questions in the moderator?
Yeah, actually,
before so Jeff, thank you for covering the Stack Overflow migration. I think we are really looking forward to being more scalable and then having some community participation. I think one thing that I personally like about Stack Overflow is, in addition to good karma, it also helps you with reputation, and you can earn some badges, which is really cool since we all play games, and life wouldn't be the same without badges. So
yeah.
All right,
well,
Jeremy, over to you.
Yeah, let's get started. So the first question is actually on HTML5. So they actually want to know, from your perspective, what's the best resource to get started, And then second, what are the prerequisites they need to know before they start messing with HTML5?
Sure. So I've been a big fan of the Opera Web Standards curriculum, and now this covers just sort of web development in general, and there is some HTML5 stuff in there. Once you're getting into sort of like the newer things, the things that are really awesome, HTML5 rocks. Has a bunch of great examples and links to more resources and more detail. So those are some of those two things. The Opera Web Standards curriculum and HTML5 rocks are some of my favorite places to sort of look at good examples. After that, you're like having to read the spec for these things, and that can get a little complicated.
I also want to point out I really like the Mozilla Developer Network pages, specifically for like providing, it seems to me at least, the canonical definition of different JavaScript objects and the methods they expose and code samples for all those. And it's not specific to HTML5 JavaScript, but just if you're doing anything, I always tend to click on the Mozilla Developer Network links when I have a search.
Yeah, that's one of the best places to find documentation for any web development stuff.
And what about prereqs? What do you think you have to know before you get started with that?
I mean, so you have to know HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. You really don't have to be too advanced in it just to get started. That's one of the goals of HTML5 is to make it simple, so that anybody on the web could build sort of this richness. And so, like, just to get a video playing, it's as simple as having a video tag with a source and just like a controls attribute, and so there's really not too much, but you do need to be familiar with HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS.
Great. So we got a couple more. One is they basically want to know if an on-progress event is coming, so that you can get that'll be fired for progress and seek. They currently are polling the get player state to get the progress.
So that's actually an interesting one. I actually got into a discussion with somebody about on progress and other sort of APIs. I'm currently trying to convince the team that not only do we need to have events like on progress, but I think that we need to really enhance our API to be able to provide the richest experience that we can give. So one of the interesting things is HTML5 has some new APIs that deal with just media in general, and they do a better job at providing an API than we do. And I think that for us, in order to make sure that people are still able to build great applications on the web using YouTube, I think that we need to have an API that's not only on par but even better than what you could get natively. So it's something that I'm trying to convince the team to do. That one I don't think should be very difficult. But so hopefully these things will come, but I'm not quite sure when we'll be able to get them.
So in the meantime, what's the workaround? Just set up a timer and use the iframe API.
Yeah.
And just poll.
It's just a timer. 250 milliseconds should be able to. I believe in our documentation we say that like even get current time is going to be at most out of date by 250 milliseconds. Mm-hmm. So you can at least just have a timer on that, and that should be the same. But it's not right. It's not as comfortable to program that way when you're using an event-driven environment. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so 250 milliseconds should be at least a good workaround for now.
Cool. We have another question from the Netherlands around HTML5 versus Flash. So in HTML5 it downloads the whole video, whereas Flash only downloads what it needs to not rebuffer again until I guess it needs to. So they basically ask if you're aware of this.
This is something that we're aware of. For HTML5, the buffering's out of our hands as the spec currently stands. It's decided by the browser. For Flash, it has to do with our streaming and sort of the adaptiveness. And so we don't buffer as much because you might switch qualities quickly, and we don't want to get all that extra thing It's something that's in discussion. Like if you go into the settings menu and you change the format, and if it's anything that's not auto, it should buffer all the way through. Otherwise, it sort of only does a portion of it, and it'll sort of wait until you've started playing more.
Great. Let's see. So we have another one. Lots of developers need the classic player +1 feature, and currently, if you need that, you need to basically get the whole entire Chromeless player. And they were, well, it's more suggestion, but I guess the question would be: is there any chance that we're going to release a kind of like a plugin where you get the bare bones and you can add like one of the features, opposed to getting the entire Chromeless player?
Sure. So for some of our features like annotations and captions, we're working on getting APIs available so that you can turn those things on and off and get that. For things like still having our controls and adding things to it, it's not something that we've really discussed. But I'll bring it back to the team and sort of see what people think. But it's not something that's in the pipeline yet.
Great. And the top question is Google YouTube developer relations hiring? And of course we are.
I can take that. Both Google developer relations and YouTube developer relations are hiring. To learn more, go to developers.google.com/jobs, and you will see all the types of positions that we're hiring for, and also a little bit more information about what we do. There was one more question added, I think it came through from Israel, about playback rate controlled via the API. So I can take that since I played around with that. So the question is whether there's a way to actually change the playback rate using the API. So if you have been paying attention with HTML5 player, you can actually change the speed at which the video plays, which is a really cool feature that a lot of people don't know about. But I personally like it a lot because a lot of times when I'm watching video on demand, I prefer to kind of go through it quickly, especially with some kind of an educational content, like this one, for example. So with HTML5, actually, we do have an iframe API. So if you go to the iframe API reference, you'll see two relevant methods. One is called get playback rate, and you can actually get the rate at which the video is playing today. You can see playback rates at which the playback is available for a given video. So that's get available playback rates, and then set playback rate will let you control the playback rate. So that is actually already available for HTML5. Last time I checked, we didn't actually support it for Flash, so nothing is going to blow up if you invoke these iframe API operations. Again, iframe API abstracts the differences between the Flash player and the HTML5 player, and this is, I suppose, why you might be having some of the issues trying to convince the team to add new APIs, because we always have to look at both, and we attempt to provide a consistent user experience for developers across these different technologies. But for the Flash player, if you look at available playback rate, you only see one, and it's gonna be a multiplier of one. And then if you set it, then you're gonna get back to where you were, which is standard playback. So we don't have that for Flash yet, but you can play around with it already in our HTML5 player.
And just to clarify, although the API is there and working in the HTML5 player, not all of the browsers have support for variable playback speeds. Mm-hmm. So this will work great in Chrome, but Opera does not have this feature yet. So you'll only get, if you query what available playback speeds are, you're always going to get just one.
Hence, you have 9 mobile browsers on your phone,
right,
and probably even more on your desktop.
Yep.
All right. I think we have run out of questions and running out of time as well. So I would like to thank you all for watching. See you next week. Same time, same place, virtually on the net, or perhaps on the Hangout in the studio. Jeff, hope your cough continues improving. I've been counting your coughs every session. I think this has been the best one thus far, unless you've been using mute secretly.
I've been secretly muted quite
a
bit.
Oh no, that's cheating.
I'm gonna see if I can install a mute button maybe in my my bronchial tubes or something like that. Just spare everybody in the office around me.
Either that or get better. I prefer the latter.
Yeah.
All right. Take it easy, and thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.